Welcome to In the Huddle with Heath and Hyams. I'm Jimmy Hyams along with Heath Shuler. Heath, a former star quarterback at Tennessee. He was a runner-up for the Heisman Trophy. He was a number 3 pick overall in the 1994 draft. Heath Shuler, how you doing?
Jimmy, I'm so excited about today. It's our first podcast we're doing together, and this is pretty awesome. You know, I've always enjoyed over the years working with you, and continued our working together, and it's going to be a great season.
I look forward to it. We're going to be launching these Fridays from 2 to 3 o'clock. We're going to have some remotes. We'll do it throughout the football season, which will either be 14 or 15 episodes, depending on how Tennessee does. So let's jump right into it. And this segment is brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. Whatever building materials that you need, whether commercial or residential, they've got it. If you're starting a project, you know who to call. That's A.G. Hines Company, selling building materials since anyone can remember. All right, the big story coming out of Tennessee's camp, the quarterback job was won by Joey Aguilar, the transfer from Appalachian State. Had a cup of coffee at UCLA before moving on to Tennessee, played a couple of years in junior college. Heath, you have got a lot of contacts in Boone, North Carolina and Appy State. What are you hearing about Joey Aguilar?
Well, I've heard some really great things, and it's always great. You can hear it from the outside, the fans and everyone else. But when you talk to the players themselves, in particular, I had a chance to talk to a couple of his receivers that he had at App State. The great thing is they had a lot of confidence in him. Leadership qualities is probably at the top of the list. And if you hear the UT coaches talk about leadership is his forte, he's really kind of changed that the quarterback room in a positive way. And with having two young guys there to be able to watch a more senior guy that's been been in college football for 5 years now, it's really it's a positive for everyone in that room. And to be able to showcase Joey's talents on the SEC level is going to be a really big throughout this entire this fall. So I'm excited about what he's had. I went to practice. I watched him. Now, he does sling the ball around. I mean, he may throw a couple of picks. I think he had 10 picks last year, 30 touchdown passes, average over 260 yards a game. So, statistically, he throws the ball extremely well. I think that a lot of this offense that we're going to start seeing is he's got to learn some patience and not throw into coverage, even though he's got a big arm and can fit it into coverage sometimes. He's got to take what the defense gives him.
So let's go over those 2-year stats at Appy State. In 2023, he had 14 games. He threw for 3,757 yards, 33 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and completed almost 64%. Now, the next year, his numbers were not quite as good. 11 games, he completed 56%, right at 3,000 yards, 23 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. That's 24 picks in 2 years. Heath, we haven't seen a quarterback under Josh Heupel throw double-digit interceptions. What's the key to him reducing the interception numbers that he had at Appy State?
I think it's the way you practice. And I think this coaching staff with Joey Hawsley being in his ear constantly, going to practice and watching. And when he kind of did that, just turning through the ball a couple different times, I saw that arm go around the quarterback when the quarterback coach is whispering in his ear and says, "We can't do that here." That's an interception. Even though it wasn't an interception at practice, in game time, it certainly will be. I think that is probably the difference. I have a great deal of respect for Coach Hawsley and what he's been able to bring the quarterbacks, and certainly what Coach Heupel playing such at a high level in college and the NFL that Coach Hawsley Coach Heupel actually brings the table. So it's he's going to get the best of the best. I think that App State, I knew the quarterback coach there. I think that was a very challenging environment, is a nice way of saying it. A very challenging environment there for the quarterbacks. I saw what they went through. I saw the struggles from a lot of different quarterbacks that were there. There was always kind of looking over their shoulder or trying to figure out if the coach is going to be mad. Is he going to pull me? So I don't think that you're going to see that with this coaching staff. They've got the confidence in Joey that he'll come in and play extremely well.
Yeah, Joey also lost some of his skill position people from year 1 to 2, so that probably
He did.
impacted him.
And I think up front too. I mean, if you're able to protect the quarterback up front, then it's good. And they didn't have as big as their win-loss column obviously reflected that by turning the ball over, which we can't do.
Okay, so let me ask you a few questions about Aguilar. Do you believe he'll be able to operate the up-tempo offense?
I really think so. I watched it at practice. It was much faster than what I saw last year with Nico. I didn't see that tempo with Nico. I think he need, quarterbacks are different, right? Some quarterbacks need a slower tempo. Some need that operating very fast. I think Joey's one of those. He can operate fast. He can think on his feet. He's ready for the next play. It just wasn't Nico last year. It's not taking anything away from how Nico played, but it just some quarterbacks do really well in 2-minute drill. The way the way that this offense almost appears to be like it's in a 2-minute drill all the time. Some perform very well, and others need a little bit more time to think through the process.
Are you confident in Aguilar's ability to read defenses?
Yes, I do. I did watch, I think it's always great. And I think, I've not seen anybody in college do this. Maybe I've just not watched enough practice at some other schools, but, they have the GoPros or the helmet cams on all the quarterbacks. I think that's great. It tells you where their eyes are looking, right? Where their helmets are. It's one thing to see the stripe on the helmet. And that was always, I remember Coach Cutcliffe always could tell us with the stripe on the helmet, the quarterbacks always had to have the stripe on the helmet where you could see where your eyes were actually looking. I think it even makes it even more powerful to be able to coach a quarterback when he's actually got the camera on his helmet and you're seeing exactly what he is seeing.
Joey's 6'3", he's 220 pounds. So it's 3rd and 3. Do you feel like he's the kind of quarterback that can get you 4 yards on that zone read on 3rd downs?
I think he can. I think he moves well enough to be able to make those plays. Is he going to be as fast as Hendon or Joe, when Joe ultimately learned last season how to run the football kind of late in the season? I don't know if he's going to be to that type of athleticism, but I do feel that he moves well enough in the pocket that he's going to make some really good plays. Hendon was an exception. I think he just really was able to see the defense and he knew the right times to run, when to throw it away, and then when to try to throw the ball on the run when he got out in the pocket. Joe didn't throw the ball out in the pocket. Joe didn't, when he escaped, he was looking for one thing, and that was to run or throw the ball away. But I think Joey actually is, a little bit Hendon-ish the way he actually gets out in the pocket, because he was on the perimeter a lot at App State and was able to make some big plays when he was running, had a run pass option.
Does Aguilar throw a good deep ball?
He does. He does. I think, and that's, that was kind of the struggle the last few years. We've not been able to hit the ball, hit the deep passes. I think that was kind of 2-part, Jimmy. First you have the quarterback. Can you hit the deep ball? Joe struggled with that. He threw the ball too flat, didn't put air underneath it. You got to put enough air under it for the receivers to adjust. The other part we had that speed guy last year on the team that could actually get by like Hyatt was able to do the years before. And we just didn't have that type of speed. I think we may have that opportunity for a couple of these guys this coming year to be able to get down the field, because I think that's a big part of the explosive offense. And especially when you're going fast, when you pick up a 30, 40, 50-yard completion downfield and you get at the line of scrimmage, you can bet that you got them on their heels at that point.
Right. So it was in the spring when I asked Josh Heupel about what do you like most of Aguilar, and he said he's accurate throwing over the middle. How important do you think that is for Tennessee to reintroduce that to the offense?
Well, it is. It's such a big part of their offense. I mean, it was amazing how last year we kind of really got away, and even Joe's year when Joe was finished up. We just didn't throw the ball. They didn't have confidence in themselves to throw over the middle. They didn't have confidence in calling the plays that were over the middle. So the last 2 seasons has really kind of taken Josh Heupel out of his own offense. If you can't throw the ball across the middle, because remember, what has Coach been doing all along? He's been getting those receivers as wide as he possibly can. So what does that then open up, Jimmy? it opens up the middle of the field. You know, you got corners and safeties are having to get a little wider. So what happens then is you're trying to play those safeties, and you're in a type of cover 2 where you have the 2 safeties deep, the corners are rolled up. You're trying to, you know, is that safety going to be able to play all the way to the hash or to the sideline from the hash, or is he going to be able to play the middle? If they drop in, you got to be able to, go outside as opposed to throwing over the middle. And they've really taken that away from us the last 2 years, of teams have, because we chose not to throw it over the middle. I don't think that was a play calling. I think it wasn't comfortable for either quarterback to be able to throw it across the middle.
Yeah, good point. All right, that's our look at Joey Aguilar. Let's get to our next segment. It's brought to you by Matlock Tires, a full-service tire center that offers top-quality tire brands, expert service, and installation. Matlock Tires has 5 convenient locations to serve you. That's where I go to get my tires and all of my oil changes. All right, the Tennessee running backs room. They lose the SEC Offensive Player of the Year in Dylan Sampson. He ran for almost 1,500 yards. He set a school record with 22 rushing touchdowns. Now you've got Deshaun Bishop, you got Peyton Lewis, and then you got the Duke transfer Star Thomas. What do you see evolving with the running game with those 3?
You know, it kind of reminds me of kind of back in the years that you had some really strong dual, packages that you could put in, and you kind of feel like whichever running back was in the game, they were going to pick up the yards, right? I mean, back when I played, you had Aaron Hayden, Little Man Stewart. Then you had the third one with Charlie Garner came in. So I think you got really strong. What's that? You got really strong backs.
That's a pretty good trio.
I know there's a lot of people probably debate me, Jimmy, but I don't think there was a better trio in all of Tennessee history in those 3 guys. I mean, they each brought a different dynamic to the game, but the one thing that was in common with both of them is they have tenacity, they had the grit, and they had the work ethic and will to want to win. And, above all else, the winning part of it was separated themselves from good running backs to great running backs in Tennessee history. And I think these guys
got there's that. A chance.
Yeah, I think they got it. I don't know as much about Starr and see where he's ultimately going. I watched a lot of his film, and highlights are one thing. But I think he's, to be able to come to the SEC is a little bit different than the ACC, right? Week in and week out, at least. I mean, they got obviously some really good teams in the ACC, but week in and week out, you got to perform at a really high level, protect the football. I really liked how Bishop came on last year when Dylan Simpson had a little bit of an injury and it was out. He really come on, ran extremely strong, did everything you would ask in a backup running back. So, I mean, you got 3 great running backs, Jimmy, and not a lot of schools can say that. But I will tell you this, they're only as good as that offensive line will give them an opportunity to open a hole for them. And we got to have a strong passing game. The better our passing game is, the better our running game will be.
I think this may evolve the way you had Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, and Dylan Sampson in the backfield at the same.
Yes.
So pretty good distribution. So a year ago, you talked about Bishop, 455 yards, 6.1 yards a carry. Then you had Peyton Lewis that averaged 5.5 yards a carry almost, at 339 yards. Here's the interesting thing about Star Thomas. He started his career at Coffeyville, Kansas Junior College, where he led the team in rushing. He goes to New Mexico State, and he leads the team in rushing. He goes to Duke, and he leads the team in rushing. He had 871 yards as the Blue Devil. So is he a guy that
are you seeing a pattern here?
Rushing? He's done it every play.
Yeah, there's a pattern showing up with this guy. Yeah, I mean, we hope that that's the case, regardless of which guy gets in. There's 2 aspects of being a great running back and getting the opportunity to play in the game, right? He's been in multiple offenses over the years. You got 2 guys with Bishop and Lewis have been here. They understand the offense a little bit more. So I found kind of see the Bishop and Lewis probably getting a little bit more of a head start because, within the running game, there's also that other dynamic that Tennessee has, and that's the passing game. You have to be able to pass protect. You got to be able to block. You got to be able to pass protect. You got to know when to get out in the field. And I don't know how well his hands are. And Jimmy, you can probably tell me. I mean, how well does Starr have great hands? I mean, statistically, it looks like he catches the ball really well. And I think that'll be a determiner how much playing time he gets early in the season.
His 2 years at New Mexico State, he caught 34 passes. He caught passes out of the backfield at Coffeyville Community College. He caught 20 passes at Duke. So I think he's the guy that he may end up leading Tennessee in the combination of rushing and receiving yards.
Yes.
Who knows?
Well, see, Jimmy, I think offensively we're getting to the point. I think we're going to be maybe better than we had anticipated. You got to look at that offensive line. That's the big question mark for me, the offensive line and the receivers of how well they're going to play. I think our quarterback will play well. And if you look at, and when you get a chance to talk about either George McIntyre or Jake Merklinger, and Jake, I've gotten to know Jake over the years. I mean, what a great guy. I think he really elevated his play. I think it was close at the very end to be able to say he was going to get the nod. But kind of starting a more veteran guy that started the season, had multiple starts under his belt, 2 years. I think that was a positive, kind of give Joey the edge early on. But I wouldn't count Jake out at all. Wouldn't count Jake out. And looking at George, I think he has an incredibly high ceiling. I mean, I think he was still kind of trying to find his way in the mix of things. But, when you look at quarterbacks, you want to see where their ceiling is. I think he had an extremely high ceiling.
All right, our next segment is brought to you by ThriveN. Whether your retirement is far off or fast approaching, now's the time to plan with the expert team at TriStar Wealth Advisors with ThriveN. They can help you work toward your goals with confidence. Call 865-494-2667. All right, let's talk about Tennessee's two strongest units. And there are a bunch of units to talk about, but I want to get your take on this. I think we visited a while back where I know you're impressed with the defense, but would you put Tennessee's defensive line among the strongest units on this Vols team?
Without a doubt. I mean, if you look at our strength up front as over the last 3-4 years, that's our real strength has been on the defense and that defensive front. They're able to keep the linemen off of the linebackers to be able to allow them to make plays. They've been able to put pressure on the quarterbacks, the sacks they've had over the years, a tremendous amount of talent. I think Garner and Coach Garner has done just such a fabulous job now having Coach Hobby there. It's great to see, a former VFL to be a part of that mix. I'm just up front is, I guess there's one area you don't have to worry about, Jimmy, going into this season. Don't worry about them. That coaching staff will make sure that they're ready to go. And Rodney Garner is one of those special coaches. And I think that's followed up with Coach Banks. I got to know during the offseason, I got to know Coach Banks a little bit more with a couple of events that we attended. So I got to kind of have more one-on-one conversation with him. I was so impressed with not only, you see the talent of what he has, but how personable he was with people and the recruits. And they all know he's a tough coach, but they know, and like Rodney Garner, they know he's tough. But it's truly amazing how he connected with so many of these recruits that were at this event and how they were actually communicating and, the respect level that those recruits had for him as a coach. And so defensively up front, I mean, we're so talented. I mean, tremendous amount. And Jimmy probably talk about the talent that we have up front. In that area. And we obviously lost some great players. James Pierce, obviously, second round draft pick, that we lost. But, we've got some people that can replace some really talented folks from last season.
Well, and James Pierce, a first round pick. Louis Riddick with ESPN came out with one of his bold predictions. And one of his bold predictions was James Pierce will lead the NFL in sacks. Now that's pretty darn bold.
Well, I hope he's right.
Yeah, we'll see. And then Omar Norman-Lott was a really good defensive tackle,
Yes.
very good pass rusher from that position. But you lose a first and second round pick, and then I'm looking at
Yes.
players like Joshua Joseph, Bryson Eason, Jackson Moy, Dominic Bailey, Tyree West, Tyree Weathersby, Jordan Ross, Caleb Herring. Now, there's an injury to David Hobbs, but that's a credit to not only recruiting, but also to the player development under Rodney Garner, a lot of people. So you have a lot of experience. You got, in my opinion, 8 or 9 guys on this defensive line that you can win with in the SEC. Heath, I don't think there are a lot of teams in the league that can say that.
No, and I think that's why we've been so strong defensively, because we're able to rotate and these guys are fresh. And believe it or not, I think that's a great way that they're able to, talk these players in like, hey, look, you're going to be fresh when you come back in. You're not going to be sitting there and playing every single play, every single game. I mean, you're going to be, ready to go because you got such depth defensively.
So the second best unit on the team. All right. So I kind of like the linebackers, but I don't see a lot of depth.
Right.
I kind of like the secondary, except you don't have Jamad McCoy, so I'm not sure about that. I do like the running backs. What would be your second best unit on this Tennessee team?
It would have to be between the linebackers and the running backs. That would be my second choice, I think. Mm-hmm. I still think the running back's going to be predicated on how well we block, right, and how well we throw the ball down the field. And if it opens the pass, if the passing game is explosive, we're doing well, it'll certainly open the running game in. And they go hand in hand. They complement each other, certainly in this offense. So we need to be balanced. But the linebackers, that starting 3 is as impressive as there is in the SEC, that's for sure.
And Aaron Carter returns. He led the team in tackles with 68. You got Jeremiah Thielander, who was 4th on the team in tackles as well. All right. We're going to get to another segment. That's brought to you by Gambuza's Barbershop. It is the undisputed leader in the Knoxville market. They offer a barbershop experience that redefines men's grooming. They set the standard for quality and style, from precision haircuts to shaves. Gambuza's Barbershop. Men belong here. All right. We talked about the 2 strongest units, the 2 weakest units. Now, I think at this point, I'll get your take on this. I'm concerned about the wide receivers. Your leading returning receiver, Chris Brasley, had 29 catches. He's been banged up a little bit. Nobody else caught more than 7 passes among this receiver group. The other part that concerns me is the offensive line. They lost 4 starters on that offensive line. What would be the 2 units, Heath, that concern you the most?
Well, Jimmy, I think you've hit them exactly right. I don't know how you would rank them, which would be the most challenging, but the sad part is that's one of the most important areas of the offense. You can't win championships without winning the trenches. You've got to win up front. I mean, you can't be successful. You can't have 9-10 win seasons without that offensive line being extremely strong. And you look at the freshman Sanders. I mean, he looks the way you're supposed to look as an offensive lineman. I just don't necessarily quite see us there physically looking. I just don't. It's physically, we're just not probably where we need to be. Now, just because you don't look physically doesn't mean you don't play physically. So I will caveat that. But that's my concern, is the offensive line. My biggest concern is offensive line first, and then I would say wide receiver second. And partly because if you can't protect, you'll never find out if there's gaps or holes in the wide receiver, because they're not going to get a chance to catch the ball. So you have to win up front.
Yeah. I do think Lance Hurd will play much better this year. He was injured last year as a transfer from LSU. I think you'll see a better version of Lance Hurd. You got Wendell Moy, the transfer from Arizona. He was an all-conference player. He's going to be left guard. Your center position's a little bit up in flux with Satterwhite, and then Sam Pendleton, who's working there. Pendleton also battling at right guard with Jesse Perry. Perry's, one coach said, most talented offensive lineman they have. We'll see if he starts. And then you mentioned David Sanders. So that's the offensive line look. At the receiver position, we talked about Chris Brazzell. Mike Matthews was a 5-star that only caught 7 passes. Braylon Staley projects to be a starter. He returns. There are two other young players that Tennessee likes, Travis Smith and Rodarius Jackson. They're both freshmen. But Heath, one of my concerns is in recent years, first-year receivers in Tennessee's system, and that includes Mike Matthews, have not been very productive. Why do you think that is?
I mean, you hate to think of it, the offense is the way it is, but I mean, I love the offense. First of all, I think Coach Hoppel has done a phenomenal job of putting that offense into play. From a receiver standpoint, it's really challenging for them to understand the game early on because their routes based upon the coverages, there'll be a pre-snap, decision that they'll think. And if let's say they look and they say there's two high safeties, right? Cover two. If they look at it and it stays there, then everybody kind of knows what the route's going to be. But if one of those safeties drop in, they're playing cover three or man free, then ultimately what happens is there's conversions. So the routes convert. Sometimes early on, if you don't go to a high school that actually really teaches you coverages and you as a receiver, because most time they're just playing man-to-man or playing one zone and you get two looks all game long and that's it, right? Unless you're playing in a conference that has multiple different coverages and you have, as a receiver, have to understand what coverages they are in order for you to get the ball, it's going to be very challenging for them to come in as freshmen to understand what the concepts and the changes that happen. If you kind of look at it, was the June Jones. Remember the June Jones offense, the run and shoot offense? It was a very similar where the receivers had to make adjustments on the fly. As soon as the ball snapped, based upon the coverages, they make adjustments. In the NFL, you have to do a lot of that. So it's preparing these receivers to be successful in the league, but sometimes it's a little challenging early on as freshmen to come in and make a big impact because they just don't understand coverages the way they should out of high school.
One other thing on the offensive line, and this is not totally on the line, but I want to bring this up. Tennessee led the SEC in rushing last year. They averaged 226 yards per game. Dylan Sampson certainly had a lot to do with that. Do you think that Tennessee, and Heupel they run the ball very effectively
Absolutely.
in the system. Can Tennessee average more than 200 yards per game this year rushing?
If we average more than 200 yards a game, Jimmy, I'll tell you this, that we go at worst case scenario at 9-3. If we average more than 200 yards rushing a game, at worst we'll be 9-3. I think, but if we don't, and that means we have to make up the difference in the passing game. And so our other, question that we have is how good will the receivers be? We're going to have to average well over 325 yards a game in the passing game to be successful if we don't rush for more than 200.
That's a tall task. All right. Our next segment is brought to you by Home Federal Bank, founded in Knoxville over 100 years ago and serving the community with 23 branches in Knox County, Anderson County, Blount County, and Sevier. Home Federal is beholden to its local clients. Home Federal, serving customers' diverse financial needs. All right. For Tennessee to improve its offense over last year, what do they have to do? I've got two suggestions, but I do want to talk about the offense from a year ago. It ranked 12th in the country in scoring at 35.7. But my problem with that is Tennessee averaged 62 points a game in non-conference games, 25 in conference games, a differential of 37 points in non-league games versus league games. Nobody in the league was even close to that. The next closest differential was Ole Miss, which averaged 26 points more in non-conference versus conference. And there were two teams, Texas A&M and Florida, that didn't average a field goal difference in non-conference versus conference. So for Tennessee's offense to get better next year, what has to happen?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think if you look at Texas A&M, I think their schedule was harder than Tennessee's. Florida's was certainly much harder than Tennessee's schedule last year. Our non-conference games last year, and let's just be honest, this year are lesser opponents outside of maybe this first game of the season. We're going to have lesser opponents than we have in that some of the other schools have had. I think that helped us, once the playoffs happen, because, strength of schedule, as we've talked about many other times, that was almost didn't matter. the strength of schedule. And so it actually helped us because we scored so well, very prolific in dominating offensively on the scoring column. But in order for us to be more successful this year, I think we have to be much better in the passing game. The passing game has to be we don't, on 3rd down and 6, the coaching staff has to have the confidence that they can choose the run game or the passing game. Last year, 3rd down and 6 in a tight ball game, what did we do, Jimmy? We ran the football. We put it in Dylan Sampson. We ran the football because that's where they were confident in. And so it has to start with the quarterback. They got to feel confident in the quarterback that he's going to protect the ball, he get the ball down the field, and he's not worried about is he going to get hit. Because it's big.
I'm going to throw this one out there. When I look at Tennessee's offensive talent, in my opinion, it's no better than some of the better teams in the SEC. It probably is Correct. In the middle of the pack if you start going. I think they've got to reintroduce the up-tempo. I think they've got to hurry up. I think you have to do something unique if you don't have more talent than the next guy. So I think up-tempo is a big part of it. Do you think they will try to get back to that with Joey Aguilar?
I'm not going to give any secrets away, but watching practice, I did see a better tempo. I did see some unusual wrinkles that was like going into practice. I was like, I am so happy to see this. This is great. And so we'll talk about it next week, Jimmy, on the show about what were some of the differences. And, maybe they'll show it. I'm not going to show everything, but I saw some wrinkles that I really was impressed with about the way the offense looked. And I don't know if it was just because I think you have 3 different quarterbacks than you had of the last 2 years. I think you have 3 different types of quarterbacks than you did the last 2 years at Tennessee. Just from that, and both the physical toughness and the mental toughness. I think you definitely have that with Joey. The freshman, I don't know quite yet about where George will be. He got hit a lot in high school, so I think he's got the toughness. Jake, I've seen him get hit a lot, so I don't think they're having to worry about the rush and, getting hit. So I think you're going to Joey's going to lead the way in being both physical and being tough. That conference that App State plays in, they may not be as big, they may not be as fast, but that's a tough conference, and they come to play. And if you're going to play at App State, you better be a tough quarterback.
The other thing I think they need to do is reclaim the middle of the field. And you talked about improving the passing game. I think that's a part of it. You got to be able to throw it
down the sidelines too. If it weren't for the hitches that we threw 9,000 of them last year, or attempted 9,000 hitches outside. I looked at one of my records I held for a very long time was completion percentage. Well, in this offense, throw the hitch 9 times a game, and that'll help your completion percentage, and it'll put it up in the 70s pretty quickly. Got to throw the ball down the field. You got to throw it down the field. You got to put pressure on the safeties, put pressure on the corners. Don't allow those backers to have to play in the short game. The outside backers playing in the short game. Got to stretch the field. And you're right, Jimmy. We did not do that last year very well in our offense. So that'll be very important. The success will be predicated on getting the ball down the field.
All right, our next segment is brought to you by General Insurance Services. Since 1975, General Insurance Services has been protecting families and businesses with trusted, reliable coverage. A Shuler family business, it now has a Tennessee division that offers commercial, personal, health, and life insurance tailored to your needs. Call 865-314-7977. All right, last year, Tennessee won 10 games. They made the college football playoff. As we mentioned earlier, they averaged 25 points per game in SEC play and relied on a run game and relied on a very stingy defense. Heath, can Tennessee win 10 games again this year if they average only 25 points in conference play?
I think it's going to be a struggle. I think we got – to be honest with you, I think we got lucky to only average 25 points a game. But think about, you're still winning games, so that means the defense was playing extremely well. I mean, we got to make sure that we protect our linebackers. That we got to have, play injury free with our guys, just because of depth up front. I think going to be really well. And, when you start putting that kind of pressure up front, that 7, that's going to put a little bit more pressure on that secondary, because they're going to try to throw the ball a little bit more when you got such a strong front 7. So the DBs are going to have to play extremely well. But I think we're going to have to average far more points than 25 to win 10 games this year in conference play.
I do too. And part of the reason is that some of the teams that Tennessee's playing that they played a year ago, I think they're a lot better on offense. Oklahoma's going to be a lot better on offense with this quarterback they brought in, John Mateer. They've also got some other transfers. Arkansas, with the second year under Bobby Petrino, they're going to be better on offense. I think Florida's going to be better on offense.
And if you look at those, Jimmy, I mean, they've got,
even be better on offense. So I think you're better offense.
Yeah. Better offenses. And if you look at it, you kept saying it's about that quarterback position. I mean, they got some guys that can move around, make plays with their feet and make plays with their arm. And they've got another year under their belt, right? I mean, Vandy's quarterback, Arkansas's quarterback, they're going to be more talented this year than they were last. So we've got to score points. I mean, we need to be in the 30s. We really need to be in the 30s. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the exact number I was looking at, but you need to average around that number. All right. Our next segment brought to you by Marcos Garza Law Firm, attorneys that care about their clients. You want a local, proven, quality attorney in your corner. Let Marcos Garza help you. Learn more at garzalaw.com. All right, let's take a look at the Tennessee-Syracuse comparisons, and I want to start with the special teams. When I look at Tennessee, they got Max Gilbert returning as a place kicker. He was 20 out of 26. He was the first Vol to hit 3 from at least 50 yards in the same season since 1985. That stat really caught me off guard. And then punter Jackson Ross averaged 43.9 yards. Boo Carter led the SEC in punt returns at 16.5. Heath, I feel really good about Tennessee's special teams. Your thoughts?
I think so too. And the special teams will really tell you a lot about how well we recruited, Jimmy. Because everybody, there used to be the whole thing, let's redshirt a really good player if they're not our starter, let's redshirt them. Now, they got to keep them happy, Jimmy. If not, they leave. So where do they end up going? They get to travel. All the freshmen typically travel now. Where before, I mean, if you got the travel squad as a freshman, man, something really good was happening for you if you got to travel as a freshman. Now they all get to travel because they're trying to keep them happy, trying not to get them to transfer, and they're actually put them on special teams. So you're going to find out pretty quickly. As good as we will be on offense or on special teams, that will tell you how well we recruited this last season. Because that's where all those freshmen end up. They get some playing time. They're on all the special teams, and you'll start seeing some of these. And I think we had a great recruiting class. And I think even next year's even better. So the better we play, the better recruits we're going to get. So I think I'm excited about special teams. And you got the keys there, right? You got the, Boo Carter, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk about Boo Carter over the year. And, glad to see him back, Jimmy. I know that's been I know there are kind of mixed emotions along the way, but, I think you and I had a couple different conversations about him, and I'm actually glad to see Carter back, some challenging off the field things that over the years, but, I think he needs this team a lot, in his life. And so I think if they'll rally around him and, maybe he'll get a first, punt return or kick return for a touchdown, will certainly make a difference there.
I want to follow up on Boo. There was a time when it was thought that maybe he wouldn't return, and then he is returned. And as Josh Heupel said, he's back on the team, but not back on the field. Well, now he's back on the field because he is practicing. We don't know necessarily if he's going to play against Syracuse. There's a potential for suspension, but background than a lot of people do. Do you think Tennessee is handling?
Yes, I think so. And it kind of early on, until you kind of hear the backstory, sometimes you and that's always the hard part until you find out kind of what the backstories are, right, about these players and individually. And I remember players myself that, if they were not on the football team, they would have been on the streets or been in a bad situation in their life. And a lot of these players, they need that family. They need the teammates around them. And I think Boo Carter is one of those that he needs his team to be not successful on the field, but he needs his team to be successful in life. And I think, and to me, I think that was what kind of, I was on the other side. Look, if he's not doing the right things, and time and time again, but sometimes you need somebody to, give a little tough love, like his own teammates gave him. They gave him some tough love, right? And then they ultimately have rallied around him and said, hey, you do the right things. We're here for you. We'll support you and welcome you back on the team. And I think that's kind of hats off. But I think there's not much room for error for Boo Carter, right? He can't have a lot. He can't have another mishap.
So you probably don't want to put a ton on his plate when he does back on the field, but I in due time, I think that he would be valuable at wide receiver, because you talked about a plethora of flanker scenes that Tennessee throws. Who better to throw one than to Boo Carter, who's so elusive on
throw it deep down the field to him. Yes. Run reverses, put him in the game. It's but he missed some practices in the summer, and that was the problem. And that was the accountability that the defense was trying to put back on him and say, you got to be accountable to your teammates. You can't not show up to practice. It may not be, quote, a part of the official 20 hours, but when you got your teammates that are out there working out and there's only one player missing, there's some accountability made there. And I think that was the mistake that Boo Carter made. And he's got a second chance now, so he's got to take advantage of it. And if you're not at practice, you're not learning defense and you're not learning offense. So I think it's going to take him some time and to be able to understand what is important. And when you look at talent across the field, he may have more talent than anybody on the entire field. He really has that much athleticism and talent. The question is he going to take advantage of the opportunity he has?
All right. We started talking this segment about special teams. All right. Here's from Syracuse's position. They had 4 different kickers that made 13 of 22 field goal attempts a year ago. They allowed 3 blocked punts, 2 blocked field goals, and 2 touchdowns on returns. Now, their punters were really good. Jack Stonehouse averaged 45.7 a punt, but the net was only 30.2. And Phil Steele did a good job with his football magazine. He had Syracuse special teams ranked 131 a year ago. Clearly an advantage for Tennessee in special teams.
Well, I always go back to Coach Majors. He was the guy that always talked about special teams, that there's 3 areas of the game: offense, defense, and special teams, and don't leave it out. And Jimmy, I think you and I we're guilty of that too, right? We leave the special teams out, but it's always the special teams. It's the ones that opens the game up. Is that great run, maybe not going all the way for a touchdown, but puts you in a great field position offensively to your 30, 40 yards to be able to punch it in for, to rally your team back to victory. It's kind of that block punt that really kind of puts you in a different situation in the game. Those are excitement that turns the momentum, right? Those special teams probably turns the momentum more than any other aspect of the game. And so we have an opportunity here. We have an opportunity. We lost our special teams coach from a year ago, but I think we got a real opportunity now to be able to come in and I talked to Colquitt on the sidelines during practice, and he's all excited about this year and really excited about the special teams and what he sees in them. And it's great to see another VFL there on the sidelines and that coaching staff. And the proof is we got people back, and we're going to see how those freshmen protect and tackle and how well we did in recruiting.
When you mentioning the impact of special teams or a play can have, I think back to 1990, Tennessee's playing Florida. It's 7-3 at halftime. Dale Carter returns a second half kickoff for a touchdown, and then 5-3. So, and it's all started with that kickoff return by Dale Carter, which hit him on Tennessee's side. So that's how big it can be.
Probably the greatest athlete that ever played at UT.
There's another. We'll go to our next segment. He wasn't bad, was he? Yeah. Well, you got Boo
No, Dale Carter was. I
Carter
think he truly was the
good.
greatest athlete to ever play at Tennessee. He high jumped 7'2".
He was special.
Oh.
7'2".
Yeah,
Wow.
Dale Carter high jumped 7'2".
I know there was a guy named Carl Pickens.
Yeah, so Dale Carter jumped 7'2". Carl Pickens jumped 7 foot, and I jumped 6'10". All on one team. I think we'd have placed first, second, and third in the SEC that year.
That's right. I did want to ask you about this before we move on about Jamon McCoy, the Tennessee defensive back, suffered the torn ACL in January. Mm-hmm. Not sure when he's going to be able to play, when he's going to return. But do you see signs that the secondary, some of the other defensive backs have stepped up to where perhaps they will not miss McCoy a great deal at the start of this season?
Yeah, I think so. I think what it also does, it gives that that the competitive, that who's going to get the opportunity to start the first couple of games. I think that's going to be a big key, and you get an opportunity to showcase what you have, right? I mean, sometimes you just need a little window as a player to say, here's what I can do, and I can compete on this level. And it gets them more game ready. You know, I mean, I saw McCoy at practice. He moves around much better than I had anticipated him moving around. But I'm sure he's still got a little bit of time left. And hopefully, you know, you'd hope that he'd come back that East Tennessee State game, and instead of before we go into the Georgia and put him right in. You know, I mean, that's fast forward motion, that Georgia game will be. So hopefully he'll get some playing time the first two games of this season. I don't think they made a prediction whether or not he's going to play or not, but I don't foresee him starting for sure, though.
All right, our final segment brought to you by Ray Varner Ford in Clinton. You can check out the great selection on the Ford F-150s, the Ford Escape, the Ford Bronco. You'll find low prices and a big selection on new and pre-owned vehicles. Local, loyal, and ready to serve. That's Ray Varner Ford in Clinton. All right, scouting report, Tennessee and Syracuse, taking a look at everything. Syracuse returns only 2 starters on offense. They got 6 on defense. Their wide receiver wiped out. They lost Tony Pena, who transferred to Penn State. Their tight end was terrific. They also lost Jackson Mead, combined for 35 catches and almost 2,900 yards. That doesn't count a running back who caught 64 passes. Boy, and I'm not crazy about Tennessee's receiving core, but man, Syracuse has been wiped out. So I'm not sure who has the advantage, but I think both of them are trying to rebuild at that position.
Yeah, they're trying to find out who's going to make that next step up. I mean, because they lost everyone. I think we're in a much better situation they are, at least with some guys that have some playing time and played out on a high level. They have no one. I don't expect them to be offensively very strong, and I don't think it's because they're not good offensively. I just think we're going to be so good defensively up front. I don't think they're going to be ready for the athleticism that we have in that front seven. That's going to be a difference maker. I wouldn't surprise me if that first series it's 3rd and 16, 3rd and 18, and not because of a penalty, Jimmy. I think it's going to be because they're going to try to drop back, and it's going to, the gates will open up, and that defensive front and that linebacker core is going to do really well. I don't foresee. I think that's going to be the keys success for us going into this is that front seven, how strong we're going to be and how physical we'll be. I don't think they'll have seen anything that physical in quite some time.
Now, as far as offensive skill personnel, the teams are similar in that both of them lost a quarterback, both of them lost the 1,000-yard receiver, and both of them lost the top 3 wide receivers. Syracuse is going to start the Notre Dame transfer. His name is Steve Angeli. He played pretty well in the playoff game. In 2 years at Notre Dame, he was 58 of 80, 771 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Tennessee counters with Joey Aguilar. It's kind of hard to say, okay, I'm giving an advantage, but I'm going to give it to Aguilar in part because he was a 2-year starter. And if you count Heath's junior college years, he's thrown for almost 10,000 yards.
10,000 yards, yes.
So I got to give him an advantage. Over Angeli. You see it the same way?
Yes, I really do, and I think Jimmy, you nailed it there with the quarterback situation. The key to both of those to be successful is keep the ball away from the defense. And I think that because of the amount of pressure that our defensive front will put on Syracuse quarterback. I think they'll struggle in that area. They'll throw the ball away. We'll get some picks. I think we'll get a couple picks in the game. And I'm really hoping we go out of this first game with 0 turnovers. I don't want to see the ball on the turf, right? Don't want to see the ball in someone else's other's hands. So I'm really hoping that we come out of this first game is much better than the way I saw us last year.
Now, Tennessee's got a couple of pretty good running backs returning, and then one addition, returning rusher.
Yes.
The leading returning receiver catches Tennessee's Chris Brasley, 20. I went back, Heath, and I did a study of both teams, and I started comparing quarterbacks, wide running backs, defensive lines, etc. The whole thing. I didn't give Syracuse an advantage anywhere. Not one position could I find, which tells me that it's a whole lot easier for a program like Tennessee to reload after a 10-win season and a lot of losses than it is for a Syracuse team, which also won 10 games a year ago. But I look at their personnel, and I just don't think it compares to Tennessee. So if I'm giving every advantage to Tennessee, obviously I'm picking the Vols. Does that surprise you that I would look at it that Tennessee's got an advantage at every spot on the field?
Well, here's what's not surprising, that you're the only person I know that's probably in the entire industry that's gone personnel by personnel, position by position, and rated each one of them. I mean, that's why I enjoy doing this show with you, Jimmy, because you always bring that extra. You tell us that, statistically, I mean, you've got it down. I mean, that's been your forte for many, many years. And you're exactly right, because stats don't lie, right? If you look at the comparison between us and them, the biggest difference is, why are we reloading faster? Well, we were able to, able to play the players more. I mean, it's just that simple. And we talked about it. I'm not a big, I think players get paid a little bit of money, but not extraordinary amount of money. The NILs, I think, has been a challenge at best, but that's the way we're able to reload better, just because we had the resources, to be able to put the right team together. Resources, our facility, and our coaching staff. I mean, and I wouldn't say in necessarily in that particular order, but you have to have a personal relationship with the recruits that you're bringing in to be able to be a part of your team. And I think they've done better and better as the years have gone on here with Coach Heupel and his staff.
Coach Heupel's done pretty good against the ACC. So last year scored 54-49 against Virginia, beat Clemson in the Orange Bowl, had 2 games with Pitt and split those 2. The average score of Heupel versus the ACC is 41-16. Tennessee's favored by about 13.5 points in this game. By the way, we mentioned Phil Steele earlier, who I think does a really good job. He's got Syracuse 12th out of the 17-team ACC. Who knows where they're going to be. But I do want to get to this now, finally, the keys to the game. I would think one of them has to be the play of Joey Aguilar.
Joey, it has to start with his leadership on the field, right? That without a doubt, it starts there. I would say that's followed very quickly by that offensive line. You're going to be able to tell pretty quickly if they can protect and we can run with the football based upon their performance. So although that I would say that Joey's number one, if I would put it in, I would say offensive line number 1, Jimmy, is going to be our key. And second, followed up is Joey going to keep the ball away from the defense, number 2. Those are you got to win the trenches and you got to keep the ball away. And the third would actually be is to see how well that we do on the wide receivers. I mean, are we, do we have that player this year that you can throw a hitch to and take it, 75, 80 yards? You have that player you can throw a deep ball to and catch it downfield at 45, 50 yards and take it all the way. Those will be the kind of the 3 areas offensively. Defensively, I'm not so worried. I want to see how well our defensive backs will be able to cover. And we just need to stay real healthy at that linebacker position.
Yeah, I had one of them that ties in with your offensive line. One was the run game.
Yes.
And that how the offensive line performs certainly dictates how you do in the run game. The pass defense without McCoy.
Yes.
And I anticipate he's not going to play. So I want to see how I also think that Tennessee is going to dominate. The defensive line will dominate Syracuse on the line of scrimmage. I think that'll be another key for Tennessee. I'd be surprised if they don't, given the losses that Syracuse had on the offensive line and all the outstanding returners Tennessee has on the defensive line. So those are our keys. All right, let me get your prediction. I have called it, and I've changed this after I looked at Syracuse and realized Tennessee had an advantage everywhere. I've got Tennessee 34-13.
All right, Jimmy, I like that. You know, I'm going to go a little bit. I'm going to go one more. I'm going to say that I don't think I think they get a late score and they score 7. I don't think they're going to score on our defense. I think it's a late score, get some guys in the game, 42-7. I mean, I think we're going to have that type of game. I think we're going to play extremely well. And I think we need that. That's the type of victory that we need to start the season, off in the right way. We don't need a close game. We need to show people and showcase that we do have the talent. We've done well. Joey needs to come out, keep the ball away from the defense. He needs to throw 3 or 4 touchdown passes. Our running backs, we need to get more than 200 yards on the ground there. It'd be great to be at that 250 mark. It'd be great to be at 250 and 350. That'd be a great little mark for the offense, 600 yards is really good. I mean, hey, if we're gonna wish on this show, Jimmy, I mean, we got to go all in, right? We got to make sure we're doing it the right way.
So, what was your score? What did you pick for Tennessee?
42-7, Tennessee.
42-7, and the line is 13.5. The over/under is right at 50, so you're right at 50 on that line. So, yeah. We'll see how Tennessee does. Playing in Atlanta in the Aflac Kickoff Classic against Syracuse. It'll be a noon kickoff on ABC on Saturday. Heath Shuler, thanks for joining us in the huddle with Heath and Hyams. We look forward to doing it again next week. And we're going to be at Matlock Tires. We will have a live broadcast.
Get to see Jimmy Matlock, right? I love it. What a great guy.
I'll probably get an oil change while I'm there. So, but Heath, I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. It's going to be a fun season for Tennessee. It'll be a fun season for us as well.
Thank you, Jimmy.
So, thank you, folks, for watching, and we'll be back with you.